So I wanted to sit down and yap a little bit about all of the new cards in the new set. Hi everybody, Jake, your resident content cowboy here. Yeehaw! I'm going to break down every card we know. I'm going to talk about some possible combinations that we're going to see in the upcoming season and just so many things I am excited about with this new set, Fantastical Parade. I want to start with the stadium here because I do think this stadium, as well as future stadiums, are going to be extremely impactful with the game, right? Peculiar Plaza allows the retreat cost of psychic Pokemon in play, both yours and your opponent's, to be 2 less, right? A couple things to note on stadium cards is only one stadium card can be played in a turn. You put it next to the active spot. Unless another stadium card comes into play, then you discard the one that's out there. So I'm hoping we see at least, sorry, microphone. I'm hoping we see at least 2 stadiums in this set, so there's like counterplay around this, but this might be our only stadium for a moment. And a stadium with the same name cannot be played. So if you have Peculiar Plaza out, your opponent cannot play their same card, Peculiar Plaza, which also means that in a weird sense, if we only have one stadium and everyone's running Psychic, there are moments where you pull this card and it's like the greatest brick of all time. However, the card is so unbelievably good that you wouldn't hesitate to at least have one copy, maybe even 2 in your deck. The retreat cost of Psychic Pokemon being 2 less is massive. There are very few Psychic Pokemon that even need more than 2 retreat costs. Like if we are looking at some of the bigger Psychic Pokemon in the game, like Golurk or something like that has 2, right? But cards like Necrozma, Mewtwo EX, Giratina, Xerneas in the recent set, like so many cards are at 2 retreat. So this is massive. This also combos with so many things in the new set. It is so strong, unbelievably strong, and a must run in most all Psychic decks. Like there are a few exceptions to this, but having no retreat on any Pokemon is going to be crazy, and it combos with so many cards. An unbelievably powerful card, and again, I'm praying that we see one. What if we see like 2 other stadiums? I would be so hyped because I think these change the game in some really massive ways. I want to take a look at some of the cards that it changes the game most for. This is a really cool card in the new set that with the new stadium is just incredibly good, right? This is Meloetta. So Meloetta's ability at the beginning of your turn, which is an interesting note, I'll talk about that here in 1 second. If this Pokemon is in the active spot, put a random Psychic Pokemon from your deck into your hand. So this is kind of like having a Suicune or something like that, right? Except it's only drawing Psychic Pokemon, and it happens at the beginning of your turn. The reason I think that is interesting, first off, if you have Meloetta active, your opponent could Sabrina you, repel you, right? So they could sort of cancel this effect. However, if they Mars you or red card you or something like that, you are drawing at the beginning of your turn. So you're actually getting a really cool advantage with the ability Strange Singing here, which will be really nice. Its attack is 2 Psychic for 50, which isn't amazing, but we'll talk about generating insane amounts of Psychic energy soon. The cool thing with a 1 retreat cost and with stadiums, this thing can kind of move in and out in moments that you need it, which I think is going to be really powerful. This whole set, everything they've shown so far is like a Psychic deck lover's dream already. We already have great Psychic cards. Mega Altaria might be our best Mega in the game currently, and we've got more coming. So I wanted to highlight this card for a second just because I think actually drawing at the beginning of your turn is massive, and targeting Pokemon is massive. It'll allow you to make some different choices. I don't know if Meloetta will be a meta staple. I tried to use meta and staple together and it became metal. I don't know if it'll be a metal staple, as most staples are, but I do think this is a cool combination, and paired with stadiums, it's crazy, right? One card that I think you have to talk about, and we will get to Mega Gardevoir, but I want to talk about Mimikyu EX. Mimikyu EX and the new stadium are a match made in heaven, or maybe hell, depending on who is playing against it, right? Mimikyu EX 120 HP, not very significant, right? But its ability Disguise is incredible. When this Pokemon is first damaged by an attack, and that's important, right? Because Greninja, that, you know, like Water Shuriken or something, that does not count. When this Pokemon is first damaged by an attack, after coming into play, prevent that damage. So what this does mean is Mimikyu now becomes this super annoying wall that you can use to, like, you literally can use your stadium, right? Have Mimikyu in the active spot, or have Mimikyu on your bench. The moment their Mega Char comes in, you put Mimikyu in, and all of a sudden Char can do no damage to it. It has to swing all of its damage into Mimikyu's Disguise, then Mimikyu's Disguise is broken, then it can finally hurt it with damage. Now, of course, there are some other situations where people are going to be able to hit a card like this with damage. You could chip it on the bench with something like Heatmore. I'm thinking of fire cards right now, but there are situations where attacks will hit the bench and break the Disguise. But most of the time, if you are getting hit on the bench, at least in our current meta, right, you are getting hit on the bench with like chip damage from something like a Greninja. This also wouldn't count something like Nightmare Aura from Darkrai, right? It was not an attack. It wouldn't count something like you hitting your opponent and then you taking poison damage. You would still take the damage, but it would not break the Disguise. And this, having a 2 retreat cost, would be kind of a liability if it wasn't for how unbelievably good stadiums are. And with the ability to sort of move Mimikyu in, soak up a huge hit from a Mega on the other side, and then pivot to one of your Megas for free to deal damage is just crazy. So I think Mimikyu EX is poised to be a really exciting card in the meta. The damage, of course, is not super considerable. 70 for 2, it's not terrible, but it's not great either. It's kind of, it's pretty underwhelming compared to some of the other like 2 damage cards, right? But it's a basic, and you move it around simply with the stadium. However, a way to counter the stadium, a different stadium you could play, would shut this strategy down in a big way. Very excited about Mimikyu EX. I think it's really, really cool. It's HP a liability, but Disguise, what a powerful ability for this card to have. Moving on, I want to get to some of our other Megas, but let's just talk about some of the other cards we see in this set. I do think we have to talk about the supporters here in just a moment, but let's go ahead and go through some of our basics, and then we'll get into some of the more interesting stuff. Vanillite, this just means we have a new, you know, Vanillish coming, maybe something really cool with this. 1 energy to do 20 with 60 HP. Nothing super special right there. Pretty card, by the way. Oricorio, I like this card. I'm excited about it because if you have Ori in the active spot, Inspiring Dance, you do 10 damage, right? On your next turn, any of your Pokemon will do plus 20 to your opponent's active Pokemon. So this could be Oricorio, meaning you could KO a baby, right, on the following turn. This also could mean you hit with Oricorio, retreat this card. Of course, with a lot of fire decks, even if you're putting energy on Oricorio, you don't really need to stress too much because you put that energy on Ori, you retreat, flame patch it up to whatever you want to move into the active spot, and now all of a sudden you're swinging for an additional 20. I think there are some cool combinations you could make with something like this, which would be pretty fun. And you know, sometimes a 20 damage breakpoint is considerable enough, especially if they do have a baby on the other side and you throw like a Rocky Helmet on this. Now all of a sudden that baby, the one I'm thinking of course, is Chingling, right? By the way, that baby Chingling on the other side that might want to damage you. Now all of a sudden, if it hits you, it takes 20, then you KO it with Oricorio. Then even if this Ori goes down, you've essentially given your team a free, like, global red, right? You can hit with anything for an additional 20. A cool card, might not be the most meta thing. Pumpkaboo means, of course, we are getting a new Gourgeist, which there's a lot of Psychic in this set, so we'll see what something like that looks like. 60 with a 20 as well. Phalanx. This is a cool card. 70 HP, as a fighting card, 1 energy for invade, and if you have another phalanx in play, this Pokemon's attacks do +20 to the active, and you take -20 from attacks. It looks like it's set up for a cheesy deck. However, you pair this with something like Lucario, all of a sudden you're doing a lot of damage, and with 1 retreat cost, and the fact that you could get these out pretty fast, it's just an annoying card for your opponents to deal with. A single fighting energy, and it's swinging for 40 for a single fighting, plus it's taking -20. It's solid. It is weak to psychic, and there's going to be a lot of psychic, and there are going to be things that could hit this. Like even Mimikyu, because of its 20 psychic weakness right here, Mimikyu will one-shot it even if another phalanx is around. But I do think there will be some really cool stuff with this card. This feels like a cheesy card, but something you could slot into fighting decks in some really cool ways. Ledian I'm interested in. It's a stage 1 with 1 colorless, and this attack's damage isn't affected by weakness or by any effects on your opponent's active Pokemon. So, you know, for instance, that ability that we have there with Phalanx, it looks like this is going to completely just move through it with Swift for 40 damage. I don't know how relevant a 40 damage attack like this is going to be, but we're gonna have to see like what the meta shakes out to be. Let's take a look at some of these. Oh no, let's look at Mousehold here first. Mousehold, 70 HP, stage 1, evolving from Tandemaus. It has Family Beatdown, flip a coin for each Tandemaus and Mousehold. It does 60 for each heads. For a single energy, this could swing for 120. Will guarantees a 60. As a basic, it's not absolutely terrible. That's a lot of damage, and all you need is 1 of the other cards in play, right? It could be pretty good. Again, some of these decks are kind of like focused on being like a cheesy fight, and I always think those are fun to have in the meta, something kind of spoilery. Let's get into our supporters here really quick. So Sightseer, I talked about this a little bit on our, like that first trailer breakdown that we had for it. I don't think Sightseer is very good. You look at 4 cards in your deck and you put all stage 1 Pokemon you find there in your hand. The time this would probably be best is in a deck with lots of stage 1s and early, like turn 1, turn 3 or something like that, because the more turns that go, the more likely it is you've already pulled some of these stage 1. However, in certain decks, you could use this, and you like, given that you've already drawn through 5 or 6 cards right near the beginning of the game, you could pull a lot of Pokemon. I think this is probably one of those cards that doesn't see a lot of play. It doesn't see a lot of play, unfortunately. It's just, there are so many other cards you'd probably want. You'd rather copycat your opponent's hand. You'd rather hit a Professor's. Depending on the deck, you'd rather hit Lucia and get your basics out there. However, not impossible that you could get some value out of pulling stage 1 cards. I just think this one's like, this feels unlikely for me to be a super meta card. I want to talk about Piers, but we're going to talk about Obstagoon here in a second. And I want to talk about Diantha, but we're going to talk about some of our megas. So let's get to Obstagoon first. Galarian Obstagoon, 150 HP as a stage 2. So, you know, you got to get there. This probably means rare candy. But not necessarily. You could get there otherwise, right? Merciless Strike is 70 damage, plus if your opponent's active Pokemon has any damage on it, it will do an additional 50. So this is 120 if they have damage. And the natural combination, I think that you could see here is, of course, something like Darkrai, right? You have Darkrai in a dark deck, you Nightmare Aura, some damage to your opponent. Now all of a sudden, boom, Galarian Obstagoon is hitting for 120. Really solid for a non-EX card to be swinging for 120 damage on 2 energy, but it does force you to make certain plays, right? However, that's not that crazy of a play to make, is just to chip them with any type of damage at all. Of course, Darkrai is not the only way to do this. That's just one of the ways to sort of empower 120 damage. This does have 2 retreat costs, which isn't super fun, and it is a stage 2, which also isn't super fun. However, the supporter card tied to this is, it's like, it's diabolical, dude. Piers, the trainer supporter, you can only use this card if you have Galarian Obstagoon in play. So not in the active spot. just in play, by having Galarian Obstagoon on the bench, you are able to use Piers. Piers will allow you to discard 2 random energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. When you think about something like Team Rocket Grunt obviously can discard multiple energy, of course, but Team Rocket Grunt, a lot of the time you're like hoping you get a single energy taken away from your opponents, which can be big, right? It can stop them from retreating. Psychic decks, not anymore. It can stop them from retreating. It can stop them from attacking. It can force them to power their active spot again instead of powering their bench. This card, however, when it's 2, is devastating. 2 is so crazy because you obviously, with normal energy generation in a round, you cannot get 2 energy onto your cards. There are ways that you could get energy. You could, of course, Flame Patch or something with a fire deck. You could, Elemental Switch energy up from your bench. There are ways to do it, but 2 energy is brutal. I don't know if this will be insanely meta or just insanely mean, but either way, I find this card to be like chef's kiss. I love it. It's hilarious. The second it happens to you in the active spot, you're like, oh no. So I think this card is awesome, and I cannot wait to see decks with it. It's just so freaking cruel. It has a lot of things that have to go right for it to work. You need Galarian Obstagoon, then you need something in the active spot that's got energy, but they know that, they could be just stacking energy on it because of a card like this. There are many cards that generate their own energy, like if you think of something like Hydreigon. Hydreigon doesn't care about this. On its turn, it will generate its own energy and then wipe all of it, right? But this is just a hilarious card, and I cannot wait to play it. Next, we're going to talk about Diantha, but I don't think we should talk about Diantha until we talk about, I guess, the star of this set. So we're going to talk about Mega Gardevoir, Mega Mawile, and Teal Mask Ogerpon EX. Mega Guard first. Wow, what a card. Whenever there's the card that is like on the pack, they clearly are making... they're letting you know right now this card is going to be extremely powerful. Whether it's going to be the most meta thing ever, who knows? But this card is very powerful, and this feels incredibly good, dude. I mean, 210 HP, very solid amount of HP. It is a stage 2, which is like when you look at it compared to another Psychic Mega like Altaria, that is a knock against it, but not the end of the world. Its attack, Fantasia Force, 110 damage for 2 energy, and unlike Mega Altaria, it doesn't matter what you have on the bench, right? Altaria requires you to have a full bench to do its 130. This is 110 for 2, and its ability, the effect of its attack is unbelievably good. Take 3 energy from your energy zone. 3 energy. You're hitting with 2 energy, and you're attaching 3 to any of your Pokemon in any way you want. There are so many combinations for this. Like if we take a look at some other cards, right? If you look at something like Mewtwo, by putting 3 energy on Mewtwo, you will be ready to Psy Drive. Something like Necrozma that we had a few sets ago. With 4 energy, you can hit with Prismatic Laser, and during your next turn this Pokemon can't attack. Who cares? With Stadiums, you move Necrozma right in and deal insane damage. You've got something like, OG just base Mewtwo, Power Blast for 120, where you're discarding energy from this Pokemon. If you're just looking at Psychic cards in general, there's so many combinations. Obviously, Mega Gengar EX comes to mind. You hit with Guard, you power Gengar EX, right? And then your next turn, you free retreat your Mega Gardevoir with Stadium, or even if you don't, it costs 1 energy, right? You retreat Gardevoir with your Stadium, you then move in Gengar EX, and now your opponent cannot Cyrus. When this card's in the active spot, they can't play supporters. They can't Cyrus, they can't Sabrina, they can't get to Mega Gardevoir even if they've done an insane amount of damage to it. All of a sudden, and I know we get hyped for this every single set, but all of a sudden, Gengar EX becomes a real possibility. Now, of course, the big issue here is we've got 2 stage 2s, but this is just a really cool combination to think of. Other cards that are, obviously spring to mind, Mew, instantly powered by this for genome hacking. So you're able to hit with Gardevoir, bring in Mew EX, do some insane damage. Cards like, there was another, of course, Giratina, right? Giratina's essentially ready to go. You just bring it in, add 1 more energy. You've got Lunala, again, another stage 2. You probably wouldn't need this at this point. Gardevoir feels like it does Lunala's job just better. You've also got, you could bring in Sylveon if you want to bring, if you want to have more draw in your deck. You could power something like base Latios and hit with Luster Purge. You could do the Lake Spirit trio, because your Lake Spirit, where are you, my sweet boys? My Lake Spirits are here. If you bring something like Mesprit in, right? Supreme Blast. Now you would need Uxie and Azelf. This is like, it feels like a lot, but at the same time, you would hit with 160 and then you would be able to free retreat it or just let it go down. Again, some of these combinations feel like a lot, but at the same time, being able to distribute 3 psychic energy any way you want opens up a ludicrous amount of possibilities here. They're like the Fade into Darkness Dusknoir and the other Dusknoir are both really fun for this too. I cannot wait. Another one that, of course, there are 2 in the recent set that I really would like to try with this. One is Reuniclus. So Reuniclus, if it has 3 energy, it can start attacking with Psy Punch, and every psychic energy it gets, it's going to get additional HP. So if you can get Guard to power this thing twice, wow, like what an insane situation for that card. And we were just looking at it right next to it. I think this new set actually makes Xerneas viable. Xerneas kind of is terrible right now in my opinion, and its big issue for me is not only that if it takes damage it reduces its damage, it's 3 to attack, that's a lot, and it's 2 retreat cost. Stadium completely negates that retreat issue, right? It's just like, who cares about the retreat issue at all? And now you power it easily, move like retreat with Gardevoir, and all of a sudden you are geo bursting for 120, plus you have free retreat on this thing. Awesome, just really awesome. Now, the scary thing I think about having Mega Gardevoir or any Mega in the active spot, of course, is if it takes damage, your opponents can get to it and end the game by KOing it, right? You give away 3 points with a Mega. However, this is time where we need to talk about the new supporter card, Diantha. Diantha is a supporter for Psychics. Like, this whole set is basically, get ready to see, if you hated Suicune Greninja, get ready to hate Psychic cards. Heal 90 damage from one of your Psychic Pokemon that has 2 or more energy attached. Gardevoir is a great example, Mega Altaria, Giratina, lots of Psychic Pokemon will have more than 2 energy attached. If you heal damage in this way, you discard 2 Psychic energy, which does feel like a heavy price to pay, until of course you remember that you are getting free retreat with your stadium. So yes, removing 2 energy is a lot, but this is going to heal Gardevoir in a huge way. It's gonna make Gardevoir very, very safe from a lot of attacks. Not everything, but a 90 HP heal is crazy, crazy good. You could still run Lily with Mega Gardevoir. It'll heal for 60 and you won't lose energy. So there may be, options for you to just do that. But I think this will be incredibly good. The energy generation is amazing. The damage is incredible. Gardevoir feels like an extremely good card in the new set. And with all of the combinations in Fantastical Parade, they want you to be playing these Psychic cards. And I think people are going to be playing them. Let's talk about Ogerpon before we head over to Mawile. Teal Mask Ogerpon is pretty cool. I think the most interesting thing about this is how it will combo with grass decks that play things like Leafeon, right? Its ability, Soothing Wind, seems good if status conditions become more relevant. They haven't been super relevant in a lot of our metas. Like poison has been a bit of a thing for a while. It isn't the most relevant thing. Burn, not super relevant, right? Sleep, a little. Like Venusaur brought it back a little. Confused, almost not at all. Paralyzed, very, very rarely, right? Each of your Pokemon that has any energy attached recovers from special conditions and can't be affected by any special conditions. That's cool. It's a cool ability. I think the interesting thing about this is going to be its attack, Energized Leaves. It does 60 for 2, which isn't great. But if the two Pokemon have 5 or more energy attached between them, right, you will do 120 for 2, which is pretty dang solid. And it feels like this card powers pretty well with things like Leafeon, with things like Superior. So I'm excited to try something like this. It doesn't feel like the best card in the entire set, but it does feel like you could set up some really good plays with it. So I'm excited about this one. Maybe not as much as some of the others, but I do think you would be able to hit this threshold for the damage pretty easily. Again, though, it's a basic, and now you're putting more energy on a basic. It might be asking a bit much. And Soothing Wind, you know, you just don't see status conditions enough, right? Now I want to talk about Mega Mawile, as well as one of the really cool Pokemon tools that we saw in our trailer. It was just kind of like on the side. Metal Core Barrier is a tool, and if it's attached to one of your Pokemon, you discard it at the end of your opponent's turn, okay? So there are ways that your opponent can play around this in really interesting ways, but if it's attached to a metal Pokemon, you take minus, and it looks like 50 damage. This is saying like they can't fully read it, but it appears to be 50 damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. So this comboed with how many metal cards have like built-in ways to not take damage. You think of things like Skarmory EX, you think of Steelix. Like, this is a solid card to just negate a huge chunk of damage from your opponent. It's either they attack and do 50 less, or they don't attack because they're like, well, what's the point? And all of a sudden they've barely done any damage to what's in the active spot. This feels like it's set like very intentionally to power with Mawile. Mawile is basically the EX version of Miltank from a couple sets ago. Its attack, Heat Up Crunch, does 60. And if it stays in the active spot, it then does 90, it then does 120, 150, and on and on and on, plus 30 each time, the effect continuing to stack. This is going to be used in cheesy decks. You'll just see like Mawile decks that sit in the active spot. They're going to put things like that tool, that recent tool on there. They're going to use cards that just continue to lower the amount of damage Mawile gets. You're going to heal it with Pokemon Center Lady and Potion and stuff like that. And it's just going to sit in that active spot hitting things. And if you can't deal with it fast enough, by the time your really powerful card gets in, it could one-shot it. I think this is going to be super cheesy, but a pretty fun deck in the meta. And it could be one of those that it's just almost, you know, you're making brain dead plays. It also might be a good one for a lot of the like the solo missions and things like that. You're just gonna run into so many decks that can't do anything against this. It goes in the active spot, you hit the auto button, you come back, and you've completed your mission because this thing just keeps on swinging. Of course, if it gets an energy disadvantage, right, that would be a bummer. Like, this going first is nowhere close to as good as this going second. You could add into a Mega Mawile deck something like a Baby to power it up a little faster. However, every single card that you add into a Mega Mawile deck just opens up the possibility for Mega Mawile to be switched out of the active spot with Sabrinas and Cyruses, and that kind of makes this card useless. This looks like a Mega Mawile 19 trainer situation is what you were looking at with something like this, which could be very, very funny. I don't think it's going to be super meta or metal. This actually would have been the perfect time for me to call this a metal staple. I don't think this will be the perfect metal staple, but I do think it will be a super fun, cheesy deck that is just very eye-rolly, But look, some people are out there playing Suicune Greninja in 2026. So I'm not, sorry, microphone. So I'm not too stressed about a card like this. That's just about everything in the set except for some of the promo cards that we have. And these are actually pretty cool for a couple reasons. First off, promo Cinderace, 120 damage with Fireball Shot, evolving from Reboot. It is a stage 2, 130. This is probably not great. It can't attack during the next turn, but I'm guessing, based on how Cinderace is, like, this has to be a 1 or even a 0. That's probably unlikely, but even a 0 retreat cost, right? Which will be cool to see a card like this. The big interesting card is maybe a good promo card. Maybe. Okay. We've got Mega Medicham EX. This will be a promo Mega. Every promo card is varying levels of bad. The most recent Latios, Mega Latios, I think is maybe one of the worst cards they've ever made, ever. But Medicham has some interesting stuff going on. So it has 180 HP, right? Which is not a lot. Its ability, or its attack, Chakra Fist, will do an additional 40 damage if you have Psychic Energy attached. Also, this attack's damage is not affected by any effects on your opponent's active Pokemon. This means with one Psychic Energy attached, this will one-shot Mimikyu, like it will go through Mimikyu's disguise. This should mean that this Pokemon will KO Oricorio. Like, this thing doesn't care about what is going on on that active Pokemon at all. I could be wrong about this, but that's what it looks like, right? This will damage Oris. This will KO Mimikyu. My brain is like not working. This will KO a ton of the metal staples that you see in the game. However, it is a Mega. It only has 180 HP. It requires 3 energy. To do 140, you need mixed energy. This card could be insanely cool. It will probably still be a promo card, right? It will probably still have the power level of a promo card, but there is a glimmer that this is not the worst promo card we have ever seen from Pocket. That will probably always and forever be Latios. I don't know, that new Latios card, guys. I even tried. I was like, okay, I'll mess around with it. Maybe I'll make a video on it. That thing is so dang bad. I don't even want to get into it. It's so bad. It is a Mega with 2 retreat. I can't even start with that card. We're not talking about that. We're talking about Fantastical Parade, but I cannot start with how bad that card is. So there's everything we know about in Fantastical Parade. A lot I'm very excited for. I cannot wait for stadiums. Huge game changers. Guard feels amazing. Mimikyu seems really exciting. Obstagoon just seems like a hilarious card with Piers. Diantha, I mean, man, a 90 HP heal could just be crazy. I would love to hear from you in the comments. What are some combinations that you're really excited about? What are things that maybe you think a lot of people have not given too much of a thought, but you think like, oh no, this is going to be a crazy good combination? I remember seeing someone talk about Phalanx and possibly pairing it with Ditto and things like that. I always love to see the exciting cooks when something like this comes out. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you're most excited for, what you think like, yes, this is going to be great. No, this actually isn't going to work out. So thank you all. I love you. New set actually goes live at a weird time this time. I think it's next week at, for me, it's like 5 p.m. Pacific. So I'll be live for the new set launch. And I've got a few more decks from this old set. Old set that nobody cares about anymore, dumb old set, that I think are really fun. And yeah, guys, I can't wait. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all next time. We did it.